Everyone knows how much GM loves badge engineering, especially in Latin America. So at first glance, these cars may look like a classic example, but they are not Chevrolets, Opels, or even Vauxhalls. They are products of Uruguay's little-known automotive industry. Today we will explore its complicated but fascinating history. The story begins with a Uruguayan entrepreneur and engineer named Horacio Torrendell. His company imported vehicles and automotive equipment, so Torrendell understood the main problem facing the local market. Uruguay depended almost entirely on complete cars from abroad, but importing them was becoming more difficult and expensive. The country faced a shortage of foreign currency, restricted imports, and tried to encourage domestic production. Torrendell came to a simple conclusion. Instead of importing complete cars, it would make more sense to build them inside the country. But he did not want to limit himself to assembling foreign models from imported kits. Torrendell wanted to create a genuinely Uruguayan car. It would still use foreign mechanical components, which were impossible to avoid at the time, but the design and body would be his own. The problem was that there was almost nowhere in Uruguay to gain the necessary experience. Car factories already operated in Brazil and Argentina, but most of them assembled models designed by foreign companies, while many of the key engineering positions were held by specialists from abroad. Opportunities to learn how to design a complete car independently were extremely limited across the region. So in 1962, Horacio Torrendell traveled to Britain to gain practical experience. There, he found work at a small company that built postal vans, auxiliary fire vehicles, and other specialized machines in limited numbers. It was here that Torrendell gained his first real experience in designing and building vehicles. He did not wait until he returned home to put that experience to use. While still in Britain, Torrendell designed his first car and commissioned a prototype. It was a small, angular machine using mini components and a body made from flat, folded steel panels. The car looked so unusual that it was nicknamed El Monstruo, or the Monster. After returning to Uruguay, Torrendell began looking for partners who could help him establish production. Through businessman Roberto Vivo, he made contact with the local General Motors operation. El Monstruo itself was not suitable for GM, but its simple construction became the starting point for a more practical vehicle built on a ready-made Chevrolet chassis. The new project was not a direct conversion of the British prototype. It retained the angular shape and the body made from flat, folded steel panels, which could be produced without expensive presses. But instead of mini components, the vehicle received a stronger Chevrolet chassis and became a practical, multi-purpose machine. This was the Chevrolet Charrua, Torrendell's first project to reach small-scale production. The arrangement also made sense for GM. The company supplied the chassis and mechanical components, while the body was designed and built in Uruguay. This increased the amount of local content and created a separate domestic model without the cost of developing one from scratch. The Charrua was not a commercial success. Only about 133 vehicles were built. Small-scale production and the large amount of manual labor made it difficult to compete on price with mass-produced cars. After the Charrua was discontinued, Torrendell did not abandon his idea. This time, the car had to be inexpensive, extremely simple, and made from more than 50% Uruguayan components. The result was the Indio, introduced in the late 1960s. Unlike the Charrua, it was not built on a ready-made Chevrolet chassis. Torrendell designed a simple frame of his own, while the body was once again assembled from flat, folded steel panels. The engine, gearbox, and other complex components came from British General Motors brands. Production was established at Torrendell's own facility. The Indio was designed mainly as a working vehicle. It was offered as a pickup, van, estate car, and in several open-body versions. Its crude but extremely simple construction allowed the cars to be built in small batches without a full-scale automotive factory. The first version was the petrol-powered CA, but the diesel Indio CF with Bedford components proved more successful. According to different estimates, total Indio production reached between 2,000 and 2,500 vehicles. These production numbers could hardly be described as a major commercial success. With small-scale assembly and a high level of manual labor, there was little chance of earning substantial profits. But Horacio Torrendell had no intention of abandoning his idea and continued looking for ways to reduce costs and increase production. There was little room to save money on imported mechanical components, but the body offered more possibilities. Even the Indio's simple body, made from flat, folded steel panels, remained expensive and labor-intensive in small production runs. Torrendell therefore began developing a new project using fiberglass bodies. This material could reduce costs and also solve another important problem in Uruguay. In the country's humid coastal climate, resistance to corrosion was a major advantage over conventional steel bodies. The first model was the Grumett 1825, introduced in the late 1960s. Its appearance closely resembled the British Vauxhall Viva HB, and this was no coincidence. The prototype was developed with Vauxhall involvement and used Viva HB mechanical components. The design was then adapted for production in Uruguay, with a fiberglass body mounted on a tubular frame. The model was not a major success and sold only a few hundred units per year. Even so, Torrendell continued to develop the concept. The next model was the Grumett Indiana, introduced in 1972. Its body was inspired by the three-door Vauxhall Viva HC, although the front end was redesigned in Uruguay. Like the earlier Grumett, the Indiana used a locally produced fiberglass body on a tubular frame. Underneath, however, it used the mechanical components of the Opel Kadett B. By then, the model was being phased out, and the remaining sets of components were sent to Uruguay. The Vauxhall-style body was noticeably wider than the track of the older Opel. As a result, the Indiana's wheels sat deep inside the arches, giving the car slightly awkward proportions. Indiana production ended in 1974, only 2 years after it began. General Motors had run out of Kadett B components, and restarting production solely for a small Uruguayan company was never realistic. The combined production of the Grumett 1825 and Indiana is most commonly estimated at around 7,000 vehicles. Despite their corrosion-resistant fiberglass bodies, only a small number survive today. After the Indiana, Torrendell decided to stop building new models around temporary supplies of whatever components happened to be available. Instead, he chose a more stable technical base, the mechanical components of the Brazilian Chevrolet Chevette. This led to the Grumett 250M in 1976. The first version was a compact three-door estate that resembled the Opel Kadett C Caravan. Chevrolet did not offer a similar model in Brazil at the time, allowing Grumett to fill an open niche. Like the company's earlier cars, the 250M used a tubular frame and a locally produced fiberglass body. Its engine, gearbox, and other main components came from the Brazilian Chevrolet Chevette. The same platform was gradually used to create an entire family of vehicles, including the Grumett Sport Coupe, a van, a pickup, and a double cab version. The cars were later updated with a front end inspired by the revised Brazilian Chevette. The estate was renamed the Grumett Color. According to one version, the name was linked to the arrival of color television in Uruguay. Small numbers of Grumett vehicles were also exported to several Latin American countries and even to Spain. However, no reliable figures survive for either exports or total production. Meanwhile, the Uruguayan market was changing quickly. In the late 1970s, the country began opening its market to imports. The 1979 Expo Mobile exhibition already featured a wide range of foreign cars, making it increasingly difficult for a locally built small series vehicle to compete with mass-produced imports. Grumett production ended in 1982, a little more than a decade after the brand first appeared. But Torrendell did not leave the automotive business. His company continued importing vehicles and equipment and was later renamed Gitolar. Even before Grumett closed, Torrendell had begun working on a very different type of car. Between 1978 and 1984, he built 4 examples of the Halcon, an open sports car inspired by British roadsters. Torrendell later abandoned the idea of an affordable mass-market car and moved in the opposite direction, towards expensive, hand-built retro cars. He built a replica of the Bugatti Type 43, and from the late 1980s began producing Torellaro cars styled after the Mercedes-Benz SSK and Alfa Romeos of the 1930s. Torrendell had finally found a suitable use for small-scale hand production. This time, limited production was not a weakness, but part of the car's appeal. Uruguay did not stop producing cars after Grumett disappeared, but it abandoned the idea of creating its own mass-market brand. Cars are still assembled in Uruguay today, but they are models developed entirely by foreign manufacturers and produced mainly for export. Grumett, therefore, remains a rare chapter in Uruguay's automotive history, a time when the country tried not merely to assemble foreign cars, but to create cars of its own.